Hello, everybody, and welcome to Science. So, these past days we've been learning so much about science, right? Well, today we're going to be learning some more things. And I think today you're going to love the two activities that I have prepared for you. But first, like we always do, we need to learn some vocabulary. So, today's activities are related to one topic. And that topic is that today we are all going to be detectives. Do you know what a detective is? Yes? No? Tell me, what is a detective? So, a detective is a person that normally helps police, for example, and finds the person that has committed a crime. So somebody that has been a bad guy, and they discover who it was. And you may ask me, how do they discover that? Well, detectives have some ways of figuring out and finding out who that person is. And today we're going to be learning two techniques that detectives use to find out about the bad guys and help police solve crimes. That sounds nice, right? It sounds super cool. So today we're going to be learning all about that. But as I said before, first, let's learn some vocabulary. So as we already said, the first word is detective. I've already explained what it means. And I've also said crime. So a crime can be when somebody kills a person. It can be when somebody robs something or steals something. That's also a crime. So anything that's very bad and that police gets involved in is called a crime. So if, for example, you have a very nice watch and I go and take it from you, I'm stealing your watch, and that is a crime. If now I run away and nobody knows who it was that stole that watch, the police would call a detective, and that detective would help them to find out who that person was. So, me in this case. Another very important word for detectives is fingerprint. Fingerprint. So, this is a finger, and a fingerprint is the little loops and swirls that my finger has. So if you look very closely down at your finger, you will see that it has some lines. Well, those lines are unique. Your lines are only yours. My lines are only mine. So everybody has a different fingerprint. That's how sometimes police finds out who committed a crime. So for example, if I go into your house and touch something, for example, if I touch this glass, my fingerprints are going to stay here. And when police comes, they're going to do something to see those fingerprints and figure out it's me because only I have those fingerprints. That's super interesting, right? Another word that we need to learn is magnifying glass. So a magnifying glass looks like this. That is a glass that's used to see things that are very small and make them bigger. So if, for example, there is a letter or a word that's written down very small, I take my magnifying glass and I read it and I can see it bigger. So it magnifies. Magnifies means make big. So it makes it bigger and makes it easier for detectives to read or see, for example, fingerprints or words. The last word that we're going to learn is clue. So a clue is something that helps you find another big thing or discover something. For example, if I go into a house and somebody has been in there and I find out some fingerprints, that is a clue. If I find that there are things on the floor that shouldn't be there, that is a clue. And if I see that the person that went in forgot something like a phone, that is another clue. So if I take the 3 clues that I find and it helps me know who came into the house, that's what clues are for, to help me figure it out. Okay, so now that we know all of this, I'll explain to you what our first activity of today is going to be. So now that we've talked so much about fingerprints, we are going to try and find some people's fingerprints. We're going to try and see their shapes, see how they work, and maybe see them very nicely so we can distinguish them. For example, if you take a fingerprint from your mommy and yours, they are certainly different. So you can take a fingerprint with this experiment from whoever you want and compare them. But to be able to compare them, we need to know the 3 shapes that the lines in our fingerprints can be. So the first shape is curves. So curves are something like this. That is a curve. I'll show you a picture now. That's what curves look like. And then there's 2 other shapes that are called loops and swirls. They are very similar because they traced a circle, but the difference is that loops don't finish the circle, so they go like this, but they don't match together, they go. And swirls are a complete circle. Loops are the picture that I'm going to show you now. And swirls are like this. Now that we know all of this, I'll explain the materials we need for our experiment. So let's get prepared. So for this activity, you will need a sheet of paper. You will also need writing utensils. It can be a pen, a pencil, or anything you want. And you will also need paint or watercolors. I'm going to be using watercolors. So since I'm going to be using watercolors, we will also need water. Okay? That sound okay? So let's go ahead with it. This experiment is to be observing. Okay? So for that, we will need to compare. To be able to observe different fingerprints, we need to compare between 2 or 3 or however many people you need, but more than one person. So if you are in your house with, for example, your mommy, you can do this comparing your fingerprints and your mommy's fingerprints. If you are in your house with your uncle, you can compare yours, your uncle's, and your mommy's fingerprints, okay? So if you decide to do it between 2 people, we will divide our paper like this between 2, 1 and 2. If you're going to do it with 3 people, we're going to divide the paper into 3. So 1 line here and 1 line there. So you have 3 different spaces. I'm going to be comparing it with my dad. So first it's going to be me and then my dad. So I'm going to divide it into 2. I'll make 1 line in the middle of the paper. You can also write down the name of the suspect. So here I'm going to write down suspect number 1 and suspect number 2. You can also write down the name. So my name is Belen and my dad's name is Jesus. Now that I have my paper ready like this and divided, I can start taking the fingerprints. I suggest that you use black ink or paint or watercolor, but if you don't have black, make sure that you use a dark color like dark blue or dark green so it can be easy to see. I will show you a demonstration of how we're going to take the fingerprints. First, you will need to choose a finger. Normally, you will use the thumb or the index finger. So decide thumb or index finger. I'm going to be using my thumb. With the help of a brush, I'm going to put some water in the black ink. Let's see how I do it. This is the black ink. I'm going to drop a bit of water in here with the help of my brush. Now that it has a little bit of water, it's ready for our prints. So I will take my thumb and I will swirl it around in the black ink, like so. Make sure that it's fully covered. Now that it's fully covered, you see, it's all black. I'm going to stamp it more or less 5 times on the paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You may ask me, why do we do it 5 times? Well, that's because the first times we can't see the fingerprints. We can only see black because it has too much ink. By doing this, we have less ink each time and we can see more or less the shape. Go to the toilet and wash my fingers with soap and water so it doesn't get all dark and black like this. And I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back from washing my hands. Now that I'm all clean, I can ask my dad to come and take his fingerprints. Let's see. Now we're going to do the same process with the other person that we want to take the fingerprints from. So we're going to take our water and we're going to drop it in the black ink. Now we will take the other person's finger and ask them to swirl it around the black ink. So please give me your thumb and swirl it around the ink. Now you need to stamp it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Thank you very much, suspect number 2. We will ask the other suspect to go and wash their hands so they are super clean. And now we are ready to compare. First of all, we will choose the fingerprint that we can better see the shapes. So in my case, for suspect number 1, this is the fingerprint that we can see the shape best, right? And for suspect number 2, it would be this one. Number 2. I will make a circle around the fingerprint that I can see best. So, a circle and a circle. Yeah, so these are the more clear ones. This and this. Now it's time to compare. I want you to remember the terms that we spoke about. So, curves, swirls, and what was the other one? Do you remember? Right, loops. So loops were almost like swirls, but they didn't end up like a circle. Okay, so now I want you to see and look at your fingerprints and show me exactly where you see curves, where you see loops, and where you see swirls. So mark it down. So right here, I see some curves. And right here, I see loops. Yeah, I don't see any swirls in this one. Let's see about that one. I see some lines here that are not very curved. So they are pretty straight lines. We'll call them small curves. And here we can see some deeper curves. So big curves. We will compare the two. So here we can see that the first one has curves and loops. And this one, suspect number 2, has small curves and big curves at the end or at the bottom. You see? Now that we know how to look at fingerprints, next time you see a fingerprint on your cookie jar, you can see if it was you or if it was another person. So now it's time to test it out. Now that we've completed the first task, the first activity about detectives, we need to do the second one. I'll explain the material now, but first we need to know what we're going to do. So do you know what is invisible ink? So invisible ink is something that you can write down with, but you can't see. But then, if you go over it with another material, you will be able to see what is written down. You will see better now that I explained. So I'll explain the materials, and then we'll see how we do it. For this experiment, we will need a sheet of paper. It can be smaller if you need it, or if you want to. We're not going to use all of this. Then a white pencil or a white crayon. Maybe with a crayon you can see it better, but a pencil like this one also works. We will also need some type of color like watercolors, mixed with water, of course. If you don't have watercolors, you can use paint diluted with water, or also food coloring with water. And that's it. That's all we need. So sometimes sneaky criminals like to communicate with each other with invisible messages. So only them can read them and nobody else can. But we are very good detectives and we will find out what they are saying to each other. To do this experiment, we will take a sheet of paper and the white crayon or pencil, and we will ask somebody to write a message for you. So now I will ask my dad to write a message for myself. So my daddy has prepared this paper for me. So it looks white, right? It doesn't look like it has anything or any message in it. But now we will discover what they wrote down for us. So watch and see. So now we will take our water and a brush and we will dip it into a color that we like, for example, green. Swirl the brush around, and now it's as simple as painting the paper. And we will see what they wrote down. Uh-oh, I saw a letter. What letter is this one? It looks like letter I. Let's see what else they wrote. What is that? That looks like a heart, doesn't it? So I heart. Now let's continue and see what else they had to say. What does it say here? It says you. So I heart you. That means I love you. So let's see if they said something else. What is that? Ah, that is a smiley face. So my dad said, I love you, and he drew a smiley face. What was your secret message? What did your family say to you? Now you can use this tip and secret to communicate with your friends and family without nobody else knowing what you wrote down. It's fun, isn't it? It's time to take all of this to the sink and wash it. Make sure that everything is clean and get it ready for next time. See you in the next class. Bye bye. Make sure to send me some videos and pictures of the activities of today, and I'll see you in the next class.